Happy New Year.
Resolutions fill the air.
How do we start? What really do we say?
Is the new year a new beginning, a new day?
Page that we seek to turn over is still the newsmaker.
Yes, COVID-19 is everywhere.
And with this new strain, that's some 50% more contagious. It's really not going anywhere.
Hello, I'm Stratton Palmer.
And I'm Curtis Myrie.
Welcome to the New Year's first edition of the show Real Chat.
Sports chat, any chat.
Chat your chat.
Real chat. Professor Peter Figueroa, consultant, public health, epidemiology, and HIV, Department of Community Health and Psychiatry, University of the West Indies, has been quietly remarking that this new strain could have been here before. He's here now with us. Happy New Year, Professor.
Happy New Year to you and your listeners.
And all the best for the year, Prof.
Yeah, thank you so much, and to you also.
What can you tell us about this new strain that you have been, if even whispering, that it could have been here before?
Well, I think everyone has heard about this new strain, which was identified in England, and which they say now around London is probably responsible for about 60% of the cases in that part of England. It is more contagious, meaning that it more readily spreads from one person to another. Now, this strain, when they checked it out, when they identified it in England, they realized that it was probably circulating there from September of last year. So the simple point I was making, that given the travel between England and Jamaica, people going back and forth, that this variant strain probably came to Jamaica before those flights that came in just before Christmas, and where they isolated it in 4 passengers.
Is there any noticeable characteristics about this new strain, if and when compared to COVID-19, which started with us back in about March?
Well, what is so far, it appears as if it's not a more severe strain. It's not more virulent, meaning that it doesn't make people more severely ill. They don't get sicker, as far as they can tell so far. It does not appear to make people more sick or to kill them more readily. It's just that it transmits from one person to another more readily.
Virus.
No,
Go ahead.
No. Go.
No, I was saying viruses mutate, right?
Exactly.
So, were we expecting all this? Is it,
Well, yes,
no surprise, no shock?
No, exactly. For this virus, they already knew that they had already picked up strains of the virus that had mutated. But very often when it mutates, it becomes less effective and therefore dies out. And on some occasions, like this occasion, it mutated and it transmits more readily, so they call it that it has greater viral fitness. You know, it's a more athletic virus.
Right.
But it's not the only new variant or strain that has been identified.
Okay.
There's also a new variant that has been identified in South Africa, and some persons are more concerned about that strain, which does seem also to have viral fitness, so it transmits more readily, and they're watching it closely to ensure or assess, whether it makes people more ill more readily. They're not sure yet. And then there's a third variant recently that they've identified in Nigeria, which not much is known about. So this is a virus that does mutate, and it's going to continue to mutate. So far, the scientists assess that the vaccines that are being developed should still be effective against this variant.
Historically, if we look back at the 1918 epidemic, Doc, did we have this amount of variant coming to the fore?
You're talking about the famous 1918 influenza pandemic?
Right. When, millions were killed by this virus. No, where the mutation came there is every year you get what they call antigenic shift and mutation in the influenza virus. And on that occasion, it was the 1918 variant or mutation that it was that specific virus that caused the pandemic that was a really vicious virus. Every year we do have influenza epidemics that usually circle the globe, and thousands of persons die from it. And that is why we encourage people who are vulnerable, the elderly, pregnant, persons with comorbidities, to take the seasonal influenza vaccine, because it has shown that it helps to protect people from death and serious illness due to influenza. But that 1918 influenza pandemic was due to a particularly virulent mutation or antigenic shift. That particular variant was just dangerous. Professor, what are we learning? Because from where I stand, we seem to be just going along. It must be of concern to you. What would you like at this stage to be jobbing home to us about how we need to be taking care of ourselves? What else can you say?
Well, if we're thinking about this pandemic, this specific pandemic, then perhaps the most important message right now is a message that we're hearing virtually every day, where we should not take the virus lightly. We're talking about the COVID virus, and that we should take the necessary precautions to wear a mask when we're in public, to maintain physical distance, avoid crowds, especially indoors, and to wash our hands regularly. These are basic measures that we need to implement. Now, you are aware that there are one or two colleagues, there's at least one who is claiming that this virus only affects the
colder climes.
Colder climes, because it is certainly creating havoc in North America. Over 350,000 people dead, and it is now surging massively in Europe, where they're requiring lockdowns. It has killed over 300 people in Jamaica. So it is true to say that our death rate in Jamaica is nowhere near as high as it is in the United States.
I think it's what, 0.5%?
My calculation is currently that our death rate is 10%, or let's put it the other way, that in the U.S., 10 times the number of persons are dying compared to Jamaica.
Okay.
But we need to be careful, because remember that the U.S. has many more elderly people who are older than our population, and 30% of persons over 80 who get this disease are likely to die from it. 15% of those over 70. So it's the elderly people it takes out. So you have to look at the age structure of the population as well. And our age structure is a bit younger than that of the U.S. And elderly people in the U.S. are often found in nursing homes and are therefore particularly vulnerable.
So we are a bit, we should be wary of the comparisons then between Jamaica and then, given the age difference. But let me ask, the overlap in the virus, you said it might have been with us from September. Are we therefore lucky because this strain is more contagious but not more morbid?
Well, first of all, we don't know if it was here from September. If it was in England from September, it may not have reached here until October, November, early December, right? And it may have just been in a couple of less people, so it may not have circulated. Remember, you know, that there are many Jamaicans, I would say the majority, who are doing their best to wear masks in public and maintaining physical distance, and the elders are staying at home or restricting their movements. So the fact that the majority of our population is taking the virus seriously and following the protocols suggests that this is helping to control the spread of the virus. When you have large numbers of people, as appears to be in the United States, who are not following the protocols at all, then the virus tends to surge more readily. And once it surges and overwhelms the health system, then you're going to get more deaths.
Two things. Overwhelming the health system. What are your fears about ours?
Well, you know, I'm in touch with my colleagues at the university hospital, and I can tell you when we had our significant surge in Kingston in September, October, or October, November, my colleagues were really up against it. We were on the verge of being challenged. They had to clear out wards and use them for COVID, right? So they were working around the clock. Luckily, with a lot of effort from the teams on the ground and the measures taken and the majority of people complying, we managed the surge. Following that in the West, Cornwall Regional Hospital, Trelawney, Savlamar, they faced a surge. Now, my view is that we need to get through January and February and March, because these are our colder months. We have had our Christmas where some people socialized. There were parties in certain places. So we do expect an increase of cases.
And the parties in certain places are not just on the street corners, right?
No, we know that. Right? So people have been in touch.
Right.
So, you know, people have, so that we're going to see some surging. No, we don't know how bad a surge we'll get. But, you know, I would encourage people just to be cautious for the next 2 months, because this is when we see an increase in influenza activity, and we may well see an increase in COVID virus activity.
All right. The other thing is this. You're a foremost mind on public health. Your weekly schedule is high now with the calls to other persons regionally, internationally. Let me ask, if I must pull on you a little, what are you guys sharing?
You mean in these international meetings?
Right, right. What are you sharing?
Okay, well, the meetings vary that I attend. I am on one of the World Health Organization's technical groups, which is called the Working Group on COVID Vaccines. So this now is a technical group of international experts who review all the vaccines that are being developed, and they conduct clinical trials. The results of the clinical trials are reviewed, and this working group advises a leading advisory group of the World Health Organization called the Scientific Advisory Group of Experts for Immunization. So just recently, we had a review of the Pfizer vaccine, and the decisions and recommendations coming from that goes to the Director General of the World Health Organization, and he then adopts the advice in terms of WHO policy on that specific vaccine. And there's going to be another meeting in another 2 weeks on the Moderna vaccine. So each vaccine, as the trials are completed and the data are being reviewed by the independent regulatory authorities of different countries like the FDA, the UK, the European regulatory agencies, this group looks at the significance for public health policy to advise the countries worldwide.
The review, Doc, is a bit premature now because we are midstream now in terms of the application of the vaccine, because the second round, it would have been just started, we understand, most recently. And so would we need more time to see the efficacy of this vaccine?
Well, this is the thing now. Remember, we're in the middle of a pandemic. So you do your clinical trials, and those clinical trials are in 3 different phases. The third phase, you have at least 30 to 40,000 persons in the clinical trial, and usually it's on different continents. So once you get the results, both as to the efficacy or effectiveness of the vaccine and the safety of the vaccine, then you can make a good judgment to say, hey, this vaccine works and it is safe. What you don't know is, are there rare adverse events that you have not yet identified? Right. And when they began to roll out the Pfizer vaccine, they did notice that maybe, that uncommonly, it's, I don't know if we'd say it's rare, but it's unusual. But there are certain individuals who get a severe allergic reaction following vaccination. So far, no one has died from that. But it does tell us immediately that you must have the facilities to respond immediately. If someone is being vaccinated with that vaccine, you must have your adrenaline, your DPH injection, and the ability to revive that person if they have a severe reaction. And you must, when you vaccinate, you must observe the person for at least 30 minutes. For 15 minutes, but if they have a history of previous allergies, you observe them for 30 minutes.
All right. Allow me just one overtime question. You mentioned that the new strain is a fitter strain. It is more contagious, but not necessarily more deadly, right?
Exactly.
If that is so, is that therefore a license for the population to say, well, there's no big thing, we can ease up a little bit?
Well, I would not say it is, because if it transmits more readily, the youngster who is fit, or the young adult who is fit, when he goes home or he goes to visit his grandmother because he's doing the groceries for his grandmother, it means if he has it and doesn't know, or he's in an early stage, he may transmit it to his grandmother or his grandfather or some other elder who may then become sick.
So on that note then, we need to tell Stratton that's a license to be revoked.
Yes.
Indeed it is.
Thank you so much. As
thanks for having
always,
me.
we would go talk with you all evening because there's something that I still want to pinch a little and ask you about all that you're sharing, because it might not be on the table just yet, but I'm sure there has to be a word, buzzword even, about the other vaccines. And you know what I'm really itching to ask you about, what perhaps is all that might be happening about the Cuban vaccine.
Yes, we are looking forward to the results from the Cuban vaccine eagerly to see their results. So that we should get those results, I think, within another few weeks to see how they are doing. But Cuba has a superb biotechnology capacity, and they've done a lot of important studies, including on polio and other things that people don't hear about. So as Caribbean neighbors, we can be very proud of what they've achieved, despite the criminal blockade that has been on them.
It is full time we get rid of this blockade. Full time.
Absolutely. And, you know, if Biden and Kamala don't do this, I'll be disappointed.
Are we sharing with the Cubans? Are we getting people over there to understudy?
Well, we have, you know, we need to look at that properly. I'm certain they would be open to that, but, you know, we have to also be open to doing it. And I think this is something, maybe you should ask the minister.
We need to be clearly telling ourselves that collaboration is critical when it comes to things like vaccines and all that we can be producing as medicines for us here in the region, which could be leading the world eventually, if it is not already happening. Professor.
Exactly. And this perhaps is the very lesson. You have articulated it that comes out of this pandemic. We are all in this together. We need to work together and put aside differences.
Thank you very much, sir. When you hear about the Cuban thing, since we want to be in line early to get it, you just call me and just we give you another platform for that. All right?
Okay.
Thank
All
you.
right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Right.
Bye-bye.
We'll be back with Real Chat. Back again with Real Chat. Interesting discussion with the professor.
Yes.
We have a serious man on the line, you know.
Dr. Morais Guy.
Dr. Morais Guy, opposition spokesman on health. He's quite a watchdog, quite a watchful physician. And he has been clamoring about facing the facts. Dr. Guy.
And with fairness. You know,
And with fairness.
And balance. But
yes.
concerns are there.
Right.
And he has expressed it.
And we can't be evasive.
Right.
We can't be evasive. Dr. Guy, welcome. Happy New Year to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you also, and Happy New Year to you and your listeners and their respective friends and families.
Good, thank you. What must we face and stop go round the corner with?
Well, I think one of the first things that we have to accept is that COVID is here and will be here for some time until we can get a vaccine that will be sufficient in terms of the numbers that we can give to our people to get what is known in medical circles as herd immunity. Now, we are having a crisis in the country because not only in terms of education, in terms of school, in terms of the economy, COVID has been preventing the normal way of life. And there's this notion of a new normal, you know, as you realize, a new normal is really an oxymoron because you can have a new normal. However, be that as it may, the reality is that we are facing perilous times because as a country particularly, we are, one, we are not testing enough. Two, our health services are being overwhelmed by the fact that it is not only COVID which is presenting as a medical condition, but all the conditions that existed prior to COVID are still there. And we're talking particularly with the injuries, whether they be gunshot or otherwise, that present at the hospital. We're talking about the complications of what we call the non-communicable diseases, such as the diabetes, hypertension, obesity, which still present with medical emergencies which have to be dealt with at the hospital. So basically, our system health service was under pressure, and COVID has basically opened and shown the underbelly of our health service that is adequate to deal with it at this particular point in time.
This is not opposition, it's really information.
It is. This is not politics.
And I want to ask this, is the situation being underplayed? Many people at the outset saw it as a grand exercise in PR, but the reality is that we are being overwhelmed. In the West, it was not as prevalent as in the rest of the country, and we have seen an explosion there. Should we be concerned, and do we have the facilities to accommodate the increased numbers?
We should be concerned. I'll deal with the first part of it first. The whole aspect of public relations. In the parliament at one stage, when the minister was extolling the virtues of the control by the government, I got up and said, don't start beat your chest yet, you know, because the reality is that we are facing more than you are actually seeing. And the numbers that we are seeing, gentlemen, is really a tip of the iceberg, because based on the modus operandi, you know, in terms of the testing, we are only seeing persons who present, as the minister clearly indicated 2 or 3 evenings ago at a discussion, that we are seeing those who present at the government health facilities, those who present in the emergency rooms, who present with any flu-like symptoms. So our captive group in terms of testing, for want of a better word, are only those persons who present with flu-like symptoms at the health centers, at the hospital, or present with symptoms which directly indicate that, okay, from a medical diagnosis point of view, they seem to be having COVID. You send those for testing, you get the results. Now, we know, science has indicated to us that there is that vast constituency, and pardon my use of the word constituency, that vast constituency of persons out there who are asymptomatic, but are also positive and are also capable of spreading this. And now that we have seen this new variant that is here, it has come from what we know so far from those persons who came from the UK. But there's a suggestion, has been said. I'm not the one who said it, but I am of the view, but it was buttressed by the pronouncement of a very senior epidemiologist in this country, one who I have great respect for as a medical student and as a doctor, and I still do, and who has taught many of us, that his view is I'm talking to Professor Figueroa.
Yes, we were just talking to him a while ago.
Wonderful. That it was, he feels that variant might have been here from September. Right? Now, we are seeing a situation where the British authorities have advised us that their scientists say that this is about 50% more infectious. They originally thought it was 70, now they have reduced it to about 40-50%. But it is 50 or 40% more infectious than the original strain. And if it is here in that vast numbers and we are not testing enough, we run the risk of missing the total numbers. From day one, we were never testing enough. There are many hurdles that present to themselves. And my view, and I've expressed it publicly, I've said it in the parliament, which is as public as one can get it, that the government was not really telling the country the entire truth about the numbers.
And if we are not testing enough, then contact tracing is not vigorous enough then.
Exactly. Because you don't know who you are going to be contact tracing. And we have said before, we have said from day one, that the science of it has to drive it. It has to be data driven, who you contact trace. And there's a time, and still exists now, that there are persons who have come into contact with persons who are COVID positive, and all they have been told is to stay at home, self-quarantine for 14 days. If you have any symptoms, like fever, you take 2 paracetamol. If not, you may present to the public hospitals, but they have not been tested. Yes. So we may find that there are many people around who, were we as a country having the resources well enough to do what we call antibody testing, there might be many persons around, possibly me, possibly both of you, who might have come into contact with persons, are negative, didn't present with any symptoms. But if you do an antibody test, you may find that we have antibodies to the COVID virus.
What is happening to that? Because I can remember reading that the person in charge of that operation, for want of a better word, was bemoaning the fact that nobody, given all the stigma, nobody wants to come forward to do that. What is what is it that is causing such a problem with that whole exercise?
No, well, I don't know if they don't want to come forward to do the antibody testing. What we have been told recently is that people are less reluctant to come forward to do the test, the COVID test.
Okay.
Because there are many reasons for that. One is that people may feel the stigma. There's a stigma if one is told that Curtis has, for example, has COVID, and Curtis is going to be one of those persons who are going to feel a little down that I have it and shy away from others. And then word gets around that you have COVID, and it's almost like you are a leper.
Indeed,
wherever you go. That's one. Two, if you are diagnosed as positive, there are some people who feel that they ought not, without symptoms, you're positive but you don't have any symptoms, that really I should not be allowing myself to be quarantined under the aegis of the government facilities for 14 days. And hence I'm going to, it's really a selfish but a personal thing that some people have, that I'm going to quarantine for 14 days. And what is going to happen is that my livelihood is going to be lost. My work, whether you're private or publicly employed, is going to be under pressure in terms of your earning. So I am not going to want for people to know that I am COVID positive.
According
the fear factor.
Yes, go ahead.
We are about the dissemination of information.
Exactly.
I don't know if there's a lag between when the professionals, the scientists, the doctors pass the information to government, that the same message, something is lost in interpretation. And therefore I'm asking, do you see it differently as a doctor than other persons who are in charge of getting that information out from the government viewpoint?
Well, I don't know if I see it differently, but my position is that I'm guided by the role I play in the parliament, in the government, that I'm the opposition spokesman on health and wellness. And our position as opposition is not only to oppose, as some people feel it is, but it's to ferret out the truth and to show where there are inconsistencies in what the government is saying to the people. And also to make suggestions and another path as to how you may direct this as opposed to what the government is saying. The truth is that one does not have the solutions for everything, but the more minds come together, the more there is a critique of what you're doing so that you can go back and have another look at it, coming from suggestions from another group or another set of people. Then certainly that is how you will get the information out. Meaning that I am not the only one. I have a group of experts, doctors and non-doctors around me who offer suggestions, offer advice, and give recommendations as to what government should do. And this is what comes out in terms of my public statements. That also helps me as a professional to be further educated. And of course, I do have to read a lot to sort of keep abreast and to make recommendations, to give advice, and to critique.
Dr. Guy, let me ask you bluntly, is everybody being engaging about this at this level? Or this is one of the things that trouble you the most?
I don't think that we are as engaging as we ought to. I don't think that there are some people who recognize the gravity of what we are facing and confronting as a world. And there are still those out there who feel, and unfortunately even some of my colleagues feel, that we are just having another flu or another cold that is coming our way, and this too shall pass. You know? Shall pass, sorry.
What is your position on lives over livelihood?
No. Lives, I don't think, I mean, I feel offended that you asked me that particular question, because life has to be the paramount one, right? You can, you can have your livelihood maintained, but at the end of the day, who's going to build your business or continue your business when you're dead, when you're laid 6 feet under the ground? Lives are what are most important. The greatest element in a society is people, right? And if you have, it's not dead people, it's people who can contribute to life, right? And it is because you have life why it is said that where there's a will, there's a way. So once you have the life, your livelihood will come afterwards and can come afterwards.
I have heard pronouncement elsewhere, Doc, which dictated and provoked that question.
I know.
You know that is why we're asking.
I know. And that is why I felt so passionate to answer the question a while ago as it relates to that. You know, the fact is, sure.
We have been talking about all that is ailing us. Just how should we be addressing together without thinking there's an enemy around that corner and around that corner? Together, what are the suggestions that can make all our approaches and preparations much better?
Doc, hold the answer, because the point which came back to me just now, I recently heard somebody said that if you don't have livelihood, you're going dead anyway, and that equation completely stunned me.
Well, you know, I think that is born out of the fact that there are people who feel that in this whole pandemic, everything should remain as it existed before. And no one is prepared to give a little, to give up a little, so that at the end of the day, humanity can prevail, can exist, and can bounce back.
Yes, but back to the question. What we can do.
First of all, I think there has to be trust. There has to be openness and transparency. But there has to be trust. And I think trust can only be built when you have openness, transparency in terms of how you do things. Secondly, you have to recognize that all of us are in this thing together. It is not one side, one enemy against the non-enemy. It is all of us in this thing together as Jamaicans fighting a common cause. So when you speak about the whole country approach and the whole of country approach to fighting it, it involves both the government, the opposition, civil society, every single person in the country. Now, it does not make sense that you make public pronouncements about this whole country approach, public pronouncements about it is opposition and government working together, but in reality it does not exist. And I say that because, I mean, the Prime Minister said that repeated in Parliament, but it has never happened. We have been told, for example, that the Minister says that when he's going in one of these communities about the Mask Up initiative, that he'll invite the opposition spokesman on health and wellness to join him. To which I said, anytime. That invitation has not come yet. We have been told from very early that whenever there is albeit early days, that there is going to be, whenever a new case comes around, that the leader of the opposition would have been advised. The first one he was, but subsequently was never advised. So the point I'm making is that you need to bring all of us to the table. And while I'm on that particular point, the whole aspect of the vaccine and the vaccine commission that the government has proposed to deal with the logistics and all the rest of the vaccination for the people for COVID-19. When it was announced in the parliament, all the persons who were named on the committee, we had no objections to them. We had no particular, we carried no brief for anyone, except to say that we felt that it was devoid of complete representation, in that it did not have a representative from the opposition on that particular commission.
Dr. Guy, more to add?
Yes. And we asked,
quickly, because we're just running out of time.
Yes,
here. Right.
fine. We asked, can we not have representation from the opposition on this commission? The Honorable Minister of Health said, well, because you're on the COVID select committee, you can offer your suggestion there. We feel like that is not so, and we're still pushing for it. So all of those factors are important if we are going to fight this thing together.
Dr. Guy, we appreciate your time. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much.
My pleasure, and anytime.
All right, my brother. Good.
Good.
We'll be right back. Don't you go anywhere. Welcome back to Real Chat. Chat, you know. Serious chat.
Yeah.
Here's Professor Winston Davidson, Winty, public health specialist, telemedicine research pioneer, who stands behind the Cuban vaccine.
Well, put it this way. I don't stand behind anything.
Okay.
Because this is not a matter of one's preference or whatever.
Right.
It's a matter of science.
Right.
Right? And what is expected. As far as I can gather, the WHO, which is supposed to be the arbiter of all the vaccines globally, in the sense that in stage 3 of the evaluation of vaccines, which is a randomized controlled trials for all the vaccines in different, these trials should take place in different places of a particular number of persons. It is out of the outcome of those trials which sort of qualifies a vaccine to be distributed globally. However, the WHO, I think, has a particular position because of the urgency of the need for a vaccine at this time in the world to invoke an emergency decision where, as a matter of emergency or urgency, countries can in fact take this as a sort of agreement to go ahead with giving the vaccine because of the nature of the pandemic and how it affects their particular countries and their economies. I think from that standpoint, the Cubans have been given this particular right to go ahead. This we see in other vaccines, because usually this particular stage 3 usually takes quite a number of years, 2, 3, 4 years, for different countries for these vaccines to be validated by the WHO. And so therefore, once the WHO gives this emergency authority for the particular country to carry out, to use this circumstances and conditions present to give these vaccines, I think that where Jamaica stands as a country who does not produce these vaccines and who has to depend on other countries for support, I think that the Cuban position in relation to their vaccine is definitely a source that we can tap into. And we can tap into that particular source because from the standpoint of Jamaica, and I've heard the Minister of Health state the position, that in fact, over the past, I could say from 1973, 74, as far back as that, Jamaica has had a very, very good relationship with Cuba and support of both entities. That is, support of the Cuban medical healthcare system to the Jamaican healthcare system. And we have massive amount of evidence for this from the standpoint.
In fact, they're here helping right now.
Yes, I think they have 400
right.
To help us to weather the storm of this pandemic.
Is there resistance to the Cuban vaccine in terms of international pressure where it becomes a political football? Where perhaps there is even a threat out that if countries who deal with them with the vaccine will come under some kind of sanctioning?
Well, the fact of the matter is that they are under sanction, you know, right? I mean, because the relationship that was forged between the Obama-Biden administration has been undermined by the Trump administration, and they have in fact read the riot act, so to speak, that anybody who is trading with them or carrying out any sort of relationship with them is usually targeted.
Even if it benefits humanity.
Even if it benefits humanity.
Even if it benefits. I mean, it is so unjustified. So unjustified. The encouraging light, however, is that I just listened to the president-elect in relation to the question of justice. And that seemed to be part of the center of gravity of President-elect Biden's approach or policy, and you can't put that as your center of gravity for the American people and not see this as part of the center of gravity for the people of the world. Right?
There was a Gleaner editorial making reference to all your comments now.
Yes.
In fact, it pointed directly to your remarks, right?
Yes. Yes.
And made the point that now more than ever,
yes,
there needs to be a Caribbean pursuit, right?
Yes.
Of what we share in terms of science and,
Yes.
and for vaccines against pandemics.
Yes.
That's the role of
Yes.
the Caribbean Public
Yes.
Health Agency.
Yes, it should be. We need to really be providing muscle now in
Yes.
this regard.
Yes, yes, yes. I think that I didn't see the editorial. I didn't see the article, but the Gleaner has some very insightful journalists, and the Caribbean people have had no problems. As a matter of fact, we are very close in terms of our relationship with Cuba, especially in the area of healthcare. Because I can tell you something, that what sacrifices the Cuban people have made to train our doctors, to train our nurses, to train our medical personnel, to assist us in institutional capacity, building our institutional capacity, it has been, I mean, doing it so unselfishly, right? I mean, Jamaican people owe them a debt of gratitude. And the Caribbean people owe them a debt of gratitude. And the fact is that if we have advances developed as a research advances in the Caribbean as a result of Cuban technology, then it is only natural for us to band together and to use these resources so that we can enhance the interests of our respective populations. Because I can recall in 1979, yes, we had an epidemic of dengue fever.
Mm-hmm.
And this epidemic of dengue fever was a strain that was never ever seen in this part of the world. And it started in Jamaica. And in a matter of weeks, right, it went to Cuba. The epidemic came out in Cuba, again Cuba, dengue epidemic. We, at the time, sent the samples to Puerto Rico. And when the sample came back, we found the cause of this. I think it was a type 1 dengue epidemic virus. We shared that with Cuba. And we also shared the methodology that we use in terms of the control of this epidemic. And we were able to do what we call community mobilization with the impact program workers, community by community, really cleaning up Jamaica, community by community, parish by parish, etc. And we're able to contain the epidemic. And Cuba used a similar method, and we collaborated. And within 6 weeks, we were able to control that epidemic of dengue fever. And the thing about it is that because we had not had that strain in this part of the world, it really started in a devastating way. There were a number of dengue hemorrhagic fever during that particular period, which is a bad, really awful manifestation of dengue epidemic. So we have been collaborating with Cuba, not only in getting from them support, but we have also been collaborating with sharing information in terms of what we have developed in Jamaica in our health sector.
That's clearly about our economic well-being, eh?
Yes. And you can't have within the, I mean, if you have an epidemic in Jamaica, right, it can spread to Cuba and spread to the rest of the Caribbean quite easily because of the movement of people, right? And added to that, we have a tourism sector, right? And both of us have a tourism sector. We need to immunize our people so that our tourism sector can in fact get back on its feet. It is very important that if Cuba has the capacity to share with us that particular vaccine, we know that it will be affordable. That's the first thing. Right? We know that it will be affordable. And we know that it will be accessible. And we know that if we do it together, together we will be in a position to fast track the development of our tourism sector. And so therefore, the most I can say is that the Caribbean should get together, especially in the area of tourism, to lobby the Biden administration. As far as I'm concerned, the Trump administration is really
At the end of its
non-existent.
days.
At the end of its days. And I think that listening to what President-elect Biden has said in terms of the persons who he has chosen, right, for in the Attorney General's department, and I think there's a Caribbean person in there also that was chosen there, that we have to take the initiative. Our Minister of Tourism and our Minister of Foreign Affairs, right, and our Minister of Health should all be lobbying right now, right, to assist in developing, in getting this particular vaccine. And if it is possible that we can also assist in the manufacturing of the vaccine, and we have that particular capacity, then we should also have a sort of relationship with the Cuban research persons, vaccine research person, and seeing to what extent.
Well,
we
interesting days are ahead, because we were talking to Professor Peter Figueroa earlier, and he says that the international body addressing vaccines in another couple of weeks should be examining the Cuban vaccine.
Yes, it's perfectly right. Perfectly right. I think that there, as far as the public health scientists are concerned, there's a unity where that is concerned. And Professor Figueroa and myself, we have been involved in public health for quite a long time. And we know all the nooks and crannies of the particular system. And if he says that, and I'm saying this, right, then I think that we are both at one, right? And it is in Jamaica's interest now. And you can't wait. If you wait for the normal process to take place, we'll not start our vaccination, hopefully, until the second quarter of this year. And if we start the second quarter of this year, depending on exactly what source of vaccination a vaccine we're going to get, and the cost and price of that vaccine, we're talking about 2022. Now, Jamaica's economy, I mean, we have a 10.2% drop in the economy in the GDP. I mean, it's a lot. It's a lot. And the recovery has to start from now.
We need that proverbial shot in. Well, it's not proverbial. We need that shot in the arm right now.
Yes.
Thank you, Professor Davidson.
Yes.
Thanks as always for talking to us.
Yes, you're welcome.
Good.
Anytime.
Take care, Doc.
Okay. Bye.
We'll be right back with Real Chat. We're back with Real Chat, and now we're out to sea.
Right to see on this one. No fishing.
Well, the parliamentary hush and quiet has been described as deafening over the detention of crew members of local vessel Lady Lala by U.S. immigration officials, even when freed by a Florida court. Captain Anthony Clark and shipmates Radcliffe Simmons, Howard Patterson, and Warren Rowe were held in October 2020 on allegations that they were found with 150 gallons of liquid cocaine. They were detained for 73 days, October 11 to December 23, 2020, even again after being freed by the court. The vessel was destroyed, and if not for a media firestorm by attorney Bert Samuels and team, the crew, in all likelihood, would not have returned to the island on New Year's Eve. Outgoing U.S. Ambassador Donald Tapia openly remarked on the embarrassment to the U.S. and the Jamaican government. But to date, not even the proverbial pipsqueak from the due parties concerned. Litigation team member, attorney Bianca Samuels, daughter of Bert Samuels, is here. We're cocking with ears, Bianca. Please tell us this story. Welcome. Happy New Year to you.
Thank you, and you too. Thank you for having me.
Good. Yes, tell us about the developments.
Well, you have paraphrased so well, essentially, the chronology of events. Thus far, as you have said, there has been quite a bit of disconcerting silence on the part of our government, save that which has been said by the Honorable Minister of National Security, which you may have heard, in which he essentially said, and I don't want to misquote him, but essentially and it is a development, so I might as well go into it. He had indicated that whilst the U.S. need seek permission to search and board a vessel, they need not seek permission to destroy the vessel.
No, Bianca, please say that again, because
I know.
Me old man, sometimes I don't get these things.
No, I don't believe it's the age. I don't believe it's the age at all.
Say that again for me, because
I will say it again.
yeah, please. I want to put the thing together, and it not. There's no
Again.
fit. So say this
Yes.
again for me, please.
Yes. So again, if I am misquoting the Honorable Minister, I do apologize.
Yes,
But I have
sincerely,
listened to
we
the
all
recording.
do.
Indeed, I've listened to the recording on a number of occasions, and what I received from it is that whilst the legislation, the Maritime Drug Trafficking Suppression Act, requires that a request be made by the U.S. officials to board and search a Jamaican vessel, the government of Jamaica has nothing to do with the destruction of the vessel by the U.S. government. And further, that permission is not sought for destruction of a vessel, a Jamaican vessel, by the U.S. Coast Guard.
That sound. Me don't know if it said that sounds sensible to you.
Well, what it doesn't sound is lawful to me, and I say so because I am seeing nothing in the legislation which supports the destruction of a vessel flying the Jamaican flag by the U.S. Coast Guard. And there are a number of reasons that it doesn't rest well for me. Certainly, the one that stands out is that there is this draconian option of destroying and sinking a vessel, for which you don't need permission, but for the less so draconian measure of boarding and searching a vessel,
You need
do
permission.
Right, that's not adding up for us at all. And what also stands out is the fact that we have an affidavit by the DEA agent in the US, which says that we sought permission from the JDF to destroy the vessel.
Mm-hmm.
Not true.
You see, and that permission was given. Now, I'm
Which
not sure
story do we believe?
exactly so. Exactly so. Exactly so. And it is of concern in particular because the authority, the central authority, which is the language used by the legislation, which I quoted earlier, is the Minister of National Security. And so his word carries a certain level of weight as a result, right?
But it seems to me, therefore, that you're paddling on your own without the support of the government, who would have gotten into the agreement and should know exactly what are the terms of that agreement.
That is what hurts so much. And I say it hurts because it has so much more to do with our sovereignty as a nation, and more so than the four men who had to endure what they endured. And there's
For
something I really want to make
73
for 73
3
days,
days.
10 and a half weeks. And what's very troubling is that whilst we wish for the men to speak for themselves, and once the quarantine period for them has elapsed, and we have acknowledged that which needs to be done in that regard, they will speak for themselves. But as far as we have heard, they were not treated humanely,
Yeah.
and it's we would have hoped that the government would have spoken up. We would have hoped. And what I really want to make clear is that these men, what I'm seeing in the media is that there's a misconception, which is understandable, that the men were tried and freed. In fact, the men were never tried. The men were never charged. The men were never charged in circumstances where it was initially said by the U.S. Coast Guard that 150 gallons of liquid cocaine, insinuating a huge drug trade.
Oh, indeed. Which turned out to be just mere gasoline for the boat.
Exactly.
What is
And the court having the men were brought before the court because of the length of their detention, and so protocol dictated that after that length of detention they be brought to court for the court to decide whether or not there is a case which can be brought.
So
Now,
without that procedural exercise, they could still be languishing in
Exactly.
detention.
Exactly. And so we want persons to understand, we need the public to understand that these men were taken to the United States. Now they were in at 120 nautical miles from Jamaica in international waters. There was said to have been found this 150 gallons of liquid cocaine, which turned out to be not so, and they were taken over 800 miles to the US.
Wow.
For what?
Yes,
To
yes.
be mistreated?
Yeah.
For what?
Bianca,
And-
I'm sure you would have noted, or it should come to your mind and attention, that a young man who went up with honey for his mother, I think,
Yes.
he was jailed and really abused until they found out that it wasn't what they thought it was, some liquid drug or something like that. It was actually
No.
honey.
And so what does that mean for, we have agreed to this treaty because it's essentially a concession on our part that we do not have the facilities, and the US does, which can help us to suppress the transnational crime which we are now facing, and we are looking to the US to assist us with all the capabilities and resources that they have. But if they're using these facilities to test for cocaine and other substances, for us only to hear that nothing of the
Yes,
sort,
yes, yes.
then it's hurtful.
But
It really is.
over in these neck of the woods, we're supposed to be practicing innocent until proven guilty, no?
Absolutely.
No.
Absolutely. And so everything that would have happened before the matter was dismissed should not have happened. Destruction of a 100-foot vessel?
If this was to be left alone, Bianca, what are the dangers that presents
Yes.
to us?
What sort of precedence is this now setting?
I don't I don't even want to entertain the possibility of it being left alone,
Yes.
because as I had said at the on the occasion of the media release, this is an encroachment on our sovereignty. The agreement itself, the shipwright agreement, is an agreement to compromise our sovereignty. That's the reality of it, because these are modern day crimes which have to we're trying to surveil, etc. And so it involves a sort of redirection and redefinition of sovereignty. But today it's about a vessel at sea. Tomorrow it may be about our democratic process.
Good.
We have to
I
be
don't know.
very careful. And
I don't know if they have the legs to stand on now at this present time, Bianca, given what transpired recently.
yes,
All right,
isn't that
guess what?
so?
You
Isn't
know,
that so?
I want us to wake up. A bully
Yes.
is a bully today.
Exactly.
With whatever the egg in his face, and he's going to be a bully tomorrow.
Absolutely. And if we allow him to be a bully today, we are allowing him to be a bully tomorrow. We are contributing to his being a bully.
We have to stand up to this thing.
We have to stand up.
Is it a one-way agreement? Because at the same time that they are protecting their shores from the encroachment of drugs going into the states, we have a problem with guns coming from that source to Jamaica.
Absolutely. No, and it isn't a one-way agreement.
Yeah.
But we have given the US such a hegemonic status in relation to us, which is the problem. Though the legislation says a request can be made for things to be done, it does not mean that we are to say yes to every single request. We need to be conscious of our sovereignty. We need to be conscious of how our people will be treated. We had written to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to say, look, we don't mind the vessel being searched by the United States Coast Guard.
It is
But
their
if it's
right.
120 miles out of Jamaica, bring it to Jamaica and search it here. The circumstances, they're not adding up, and they're troubling. And why, I think what Parliament really, what I would encourage them to review, because I don't know if you remember that when the shipwright agreement was to be signed, before, or rather when it was being ratified and made into the Maritime Drug Trafficking Suppression Act, there were concerns raised by several members of Parliament. But I remember that Mr. Knight, one of the partners of the firm Knight, Jr. and Samuels,
Right.
in Senate, raised the issue of the waiver of jurisdiction, of Jamaican jurisdiction in relation to Jamaican nationals, and that to allow that would effectively be
Giving up.
extradition.
Yes,
Right.
Yes, giving up.
Right. Now, when the act was first enacted, it did not allow for the United States, or rather for Jamaica, to waive jurisdiction in relation to Jamaican nationals. It was a waiver of jurisdiction in relation to everything and anyone but. And thereafter, in 2016, it was amended to include a waiver of jurisdiction in relation to Jamaican nationals. And look where that has gotten us. An
You are-
accusation of liquid cocaine, nothing of the sort, and men held for 10.5 weeks.
Is there work? Well, I'm sure compensation is being sought. Where are you now? Because you are not letting this thing go.
Absolutely
To what
not.
end? Where are we going with this?
We're going as far as we can. And, I don't want to say too much about it now, but
Right.
research is certainly underway in relation to compensation from all the bodies and states and entities from which it ought to be sought, all the bodies and states and entities which contributed to the plight faced by the owner of the vessel and the crew members.
They are to return the gasoline. Bianca? Yes, go ahead.
No, I'm just, there's so many different facets, because you mentioned the gasoline. What of the marine life?
Yes.
150. What of the marine life? It's just, there's so many different factors, honestly.
Thanks for sharing with us.
Please.
And we
Yes,
really
thank you
appreciate
so
it.
much for having me.
Right. Her father, Bert Samuels, steps into the fray right after this. Don't go anywhere. We're back. Yes, we're back. We're back with Real Chat. Pretty engaging stuff with Bianca Samuels, eh?
And to the senior Samuels, a man who can chat.
Oh,
his
she
chat.
spoke already? She spoke already?
Yes, she
Br-
did.
brilliantly.
So you don't need to talk to me.
Never an out.
It's a family affair. Listen,
Okay.
you speak your mind all the time. Chat your chat about this whole affair and all these sordid developments.
Yeah.
What are the gripping details that we are asked to believe?
Yeah. Repeat, please.
What are the gripping details that we are asked to believe in this case?
The gripping details that I'm asked to what?
To believe. We are being asked to believe the story.
The story. The details is that Jamaican boat had a history in 2009 of having the U.S. Coast Guard trespass upon the boat at the invitation of the JDF. We went to court and got damages for that. And in Jamaican language, I think the U.S. Coast Guard bad-mind the boat because we were able to discipline them in the courts.
Mm-hmm.
And so it is not by accident that the moment she was seen at sea, they destroyed her without due process.
Well, again, to quote the vernacular, them a carry belly for the thing.
Them can't belly for the thing because how this little poor ass country, little backwoods judge who can't even buy a good boat to police at sea, and we give them $20 million worth of boats, 10 boats in the last 6 years. How dare a Jamaican court say that the U.S. Coast Guard committed trespass upon a little Jamaican man's boat?
Does that history prejudice this present case?
I think so, because the cowards we are, because we are not as independent as we think we are.
Our posture to be.
A posture to be, and because getting a U.S. visa is such a great prize among some of us, then they always have us bowing and scraping to them, which has created the ironic situation where the ambassador, the representative of the United States, has become the strongest voice against what has happened. And he was forced to do that. And not a word from any politician, be it opposition or government, condemning what has happened.
Why is that? In a sense of the law or fear of the mighty United States?
It is the fear that where we have some prominent politicians who have lost their visas, nobody wants to follow suit.
I'm sure you have friends who are teasing, Bert, don't you fear you might lose yours?
Well, the only thing I'd fear to lose is my Pan-Africanist status as a descendant of the enslaved who is a proud African Jamaican. That's the only thing that I treasure, should I lose that, then I'd be so worried. But come on, America.
Yeah,
Let me just
get
go
to this,
ahead.
and we note that you are so strident with that position.
Oh, indeed.
That you would refuse to go to the Privy Council because you don't believe in that.
No, be careful you tread now. Remember, the only thing I refuse is to apply for Queen's Counsel.
Queen's Counsel.
That is my position. That's the only thing.
But you would go there. Would you go there to represent the case, or you let other people do it for you?
If a man's freedom and liberty rest upon my succeeding before British judges, the greater good calls that the oath I took was to defend persons in all courts, and therefore the Privy Council knows my position. Listen, a lot of times we are afraid to take principled positions against certain things, and the people who you go up against in a principled way respect you over the little weaklings, you know.
Yes.
I mean, when a man says, I will not take an oath as Queen's Counsel that I will serve the Queen of England, I will take no fees from her, etc. That principled position is supported by high moral standards. How can I take an oath to serve someone whose predecessors enslaved my great-great-grandfather? I serve them, not those ethnic minorities in Jamaica which enslaved us. So it's clear, you know.
Let me ask a very basic question. Given our fears and how we cower. How may our laws be strengthened to provide support with the stands that must be taken?
Yeah. All right, the first thing is the shipyard is a treaty, it's an agreement. And if parties to an agreement are operating outside the agreement or breaching the agreement, then you have the right to come back to the table and say, you have breached this here. We need to fix this in such a way that you don't continue to breach it. So when the boat was found 100 miles south of Jamaica and all of 800 miles away from the United States, and we wrote and said, bring the boat into Jamaican waters and you, US, can search it. We'd waive our right. And you decide that you want to take it to 800 miles rather than 100 miles. It means that you have a motive. And the motive was clear. You wanted to destroy it. You wanted to have the men wait 10 weeks. You wanted to tell a lie on them that it was liquid cocaine. And you wanted to control the narrative.
Because since 2009, you carry belly for it.
You can't belly for us. And, you know, I personally had a standoff with the U.S. Coast Guard because I was on the vessel in 2009, you know. And I looked at the U.S. Coast Guard, which happened to have been a Caucasian woman. I said to her, what is your name? And she said, I'm not telling you. The Jamaican police was right beside her. I said, can you tell that in Jamaica, law enforcement agents must identify themselves to attorneys? And he remained numb. He was trembling too. So when the boat was held in October, the Coast Guard told my client's attorneys in the U.S. that Bert Samuels is creating diplomatic problems for United States and Jamaica. Because apparently he knew I didn't have a history of letting go. So, you know, I'm anchored, for want of a better word, on principles. I'm not anchored on being afraid of those who are richer and stronger than us.
Is there a suggestion that in taking the position that you have and causing diplomatic problems between Jamaica and US, that you should give up your rights just like that and don't
Not
have
at
a
all.
voice?
You know what's interesting is that I was carrying the story from October and I was writing and making a lot of noise. And at the end of the day, the representative of the U.S. government agreed with what I said and began to say the same things that I said.
Yes.
And that is why when you take a principled position, you'll be vindicated, maybe not by now, but sometime later. Look, let me give an example. We all scorned, not you and I, Cuba in the 70s, right? Now I see an editorial. We should embrace Cuba because they have the vaccine.
Right. We were making reference to that editorial a while ago.
Yeah. Did you believe that you would live to see that in a Jamaican newspaper?
Mom is the word.
Yeah, man.
But
Yeah,
I'll tell you this. You said you're anchored, you're not letting go. All right?
Yeah.
May I try to pull your tongue? Where we're going with this? Where we're going
where
with
we're going with this is this. The agreement itself says that if someone destroys the property of another treaty state, both states should sit down and deal with the question of compensation. We are asking the Jamaican government shortly, when we give them our claim, what we have lost, and the value of all that we have lost, to go to the United States under the treaty and the terms of the treaty to negotiate a settlement. And if they are a little coward and weak about it, they must remember that the United States representative in the form of Tapia, the ambassador, said that he thinks this is a just case where we should be compensated. So they can quote him.
Right.
And use his voice.
Right. And we know that his voice has a lot of timber, don't it? Right?
Well, you know, once you're carrying his voice, then you can say, I know, me say so.
No, right.
What are we looking at here? Well, there's the thing about the boat.
The boat is in excess of 600,000
You're
US.
talking about the disposal carelessly of 150 gallons
right.
of gas in the ocean. Your daughter mentioned
in the ocean, they destroyed this hundreds of tons of metal and waste were destroyed in the Caribbean Sea. and polluting the Caribbean Sea.
That has to be addressed too.
That has to be
And the
addressed.
rights of the individual. Was that the case where the men were left on board to...
And they were left on the deck of the boat
Yeah.
for the sun and the rain
Yeah.
and night and day,
Yeah.
given food like dogs, chained to the deck. They are trying to recover emotionally now, and they are under quarantine, having come here on the 31st of December. So that's the only reason why we are not letting their story come out
Right.
indirectly, and therefore at the end, come the 14th.
Please call us to have that story first.
No, you call me.
Yeah, right.
But even if there were beyond suspicion and there was even an element of guilt, the matter of human rights, isn't it still
Yeah, because
extant?
it is completely
Yeah.
inhumane.
That's true. Let me just tell you how it works.
Yeah.
Consider this. A Jamaican police officer find a car that you and I are traveling in it full of ganja.
Mm-hmm.
He takes it into an open field, the car, and blow it up before we are tried. What if the car has a lien on it from a mortgage company? What if it's your cousin who know nothing about us trafficking ganja the car belonged to? You just take it and blow it up. In Jamaica, it is only after conviction that the vessel can be confiscated, not destroyed, and sold, and the money put in the public purse.
Isn't that the case in the mighty US too?
It must be. You can't destroy people's property in
This
America.
is it.
just like that.
So why
Without
can't
compensation.
why can't we share the same concerns?
Well, listen, I think,
We're
when they
plantation
said-
we're
when I-
plantation picnic.
Listen, when they blow the false alarm that them find cocaine, everybody back off the story, In fact, we were written to by the Attorney General that it is now a law enforcement matter for the U.S. So when it wasn't before now, the ball is kicked right back on their feet.
Yes.
And I don't sure if they find any man to pass it to us yet, but
Tell me, the Shaprada agreement, did they take into account that we would be suffering just as they think they are with drugs entering the United States, with the guns that are coming into Jamaica? Was there any responsibility on their part to assist us with that problem?
Yeah. All right, so let's look at it. As a writer in the newspaper.
Hello?
I like 1 second, hold.
Yes.
Speaking to Bert Samuels.
Yes.
And quite an interesting take on the situation, And to me, it seems that...
Sorry about that.
Yeah.
I'm in a store that they're closing.
Okay. All right. Well, we shall be brief. Let us just wrap this up. But to add to what Stratton
No,
just
you
asked.
asked about guns. Yes.
Right, yes. Because I'm
Someone
a
made the
follow-up
point
to
the other day
that.
Someone made the point the other day that we die by guns in Jamaica more than by COVID,
Right. Horace Levy, I think.
rather than by... We die from guns more than COVID, right? And what has the U.S. done to stem guns which are not manufactured in Jamaica? 99% of them manufactured in the U.S.
Hello?
So,
Yeah.
what are we doing to stem the guns?
I am telling you that's
What are we doing to stem the tide of guns coming here?
we could also remain quite hush on that score too as well. Yeah? Given how we are remaining silent on things that we should be speaking our minds about. But let me ask you, as the ambassador was saying, for some 4 years
Sorry,
now.
I mean, that's 2378.
Transaction.
Yes. Right.
All right.
Oh,
He's causing an inconvenience.
right.
I'm sorry, they're about to close the store.
All
I
right,
don't want
Bert. This won't be our last conversation on the matter, right?
Okay, and thanks for taking an interest.
Right.
One love.
Good.
Happy New Year.
Right.
Thank you. Good.
Stratton,
Yes.
what a thing at sea.
We are talking at sea.
Grandeur.
Well, what is happening on the land?
Well, let's come right over to the football fields, right? Where we have equal concerns as well. The new year will clearly ring in renewed calls for the start of the local Premier Football League. And we have been told that this is quite a busy week for negotiations between the JFF and the Ministry of Health and Wellness. Stratton, I'm told you have been over the ball with what has taken place earlier. Give me a little sauce now on about what really are going on. I mean, just before we go over to Carvel Stewart.
Yes.
Yes, what really has been happening?
Well,
your ears are close to the ground.
Well, as you know, sporting entities have been asked to put in the approaches that they'll take towards getting back into business with the COVID around. And the associations have been asked to present a document relating how they'll deal with it, and then it may or may not meet the approval of the ministry. And so we're at that position where dates were named by the Football Federation. 2 dates, the last one sometime in December, still no go. And we're waiting to hear what else is necessary for football to have a restart, even though COVID itself has had its own restart.
You know, they have gone now twice. Am I right?
Yes.
What really is recurring as a matter of concern? Carvel, help us out now. Vice Chairman of the now defunct Premier League Clubs Association, Carvel Stewart Tower at Harbourview, right? Sage, as we used to call him back in the days.
There are 2 towers out there.
Yeah.
There's a tower at Harbourview and he's at another tower.
Tower, yes. Carvel, talk to us now. What is happening?
Yeah.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I'm probably the worst person for you to be asking. No, because I really am a little bit distant from it.
Are you speaking into the phone? You're a little bit.
I am speaking into the phone.
Okay.
Really closely. Yes, I get the information almost at the same time you do.
Yes. But what are your thoughts on it? What are your thoughts? Share them.
My thoughts have to go back to, unfortunately, the cancellation and how it was done. And I think that is the genesis for the umpires in terms of unable to play at this time. Had we been allowed to complete the competition in July, as we had outlined, and in the manner in which we had outlined, we would have had a template as to how to proceed during the COVID restrictions. It was all the same. I don't know, I have no details of what they have presented to the government, but at the time we had outlined that we would, and had negotiations with the stadium, to have the stadium, to have all the outstanding games played at the stadium. At that time, it was topical and typical to say no spectatorship. So we would have said that also and maintained that. Testing, we felt that we would have tested before the games and we would have camped, because most of the clubs camp overnight the day before the game. So that wouldn't have been additional and onerous. Transportation, we would have had to look at that as to whether or not we maintain the 1 bus per club, or if we would have had to have 2 buses. So there were all those things that we had discussed. We had actually spoken to the Ministry of Health about starting testing in the first week of June and testing all participants in the first week of June. Where we are now, gentlemen, is I think football around the world has proven it. 1, testing is all we need. Everybody else is playing and going home. And players are being infected, and they seem to be out of action for a week in every case. Remember Mo Salah, Cristiano Ronaldo, a number of them, and each have recovered. So from this distance, I am thinking that one, fit players all tend to be, they do not show symptoms. They're asymptomatic. They recover in a week. So fitness is an important aspect
Antidote, as
of
it were.
battling the pandemic. So two, whereas they are able to afford testing continuously, I don't think we would be able to afford it.
That's a question I was coming
Right.
to.
Yes. However,
How would you combat that?
no, I mean, we have to be convincing in our arguments, right? The general population is not being tested. Asymptomatic persons are not being tested unless they turn up at the airport. We are still testing people who are coughing and sneezing.
In fact,
That is
that's all that we are doing.
That is all we're doing. So the occurrence of COVID within the football is absent. It's not within the football. The players all go off and go home and come back. In other words, there are very few occurrences of multiple players in a club being infected. The point I'm making there is that evidence is there that the sport itself is not carrying a spreader. It's not a spreader. The spreaders are all in communities and all in parties and all in similar situations. But the game itself is not a spreader.
One of the chief concerns, Carvel, is that
Yes.
the players would go back to their community. And
Yes, like all of us, Chata.
Okay. No, and they come back
Yes.
and infect, etc. But that
Yeah.
can be done by reference to what we have
Testing.
seen, testing,
Yeah.
the fact that you're
Testing.
saying now, many people go out and go back to their communities, want to take due care going in and coming out. It could be
Right.
minimized. So that's an
I
argument.
think it would be
But
minimized.
is the ministry looking for a foolproof safety measure?
That is what it is.
I don't see where that exists in the world because it doesn't. In the jurisdictions where you have tremendous testing and the ability to afford the testing and so on, players come back infected.
But Carvel, you mentioned those early meetings from July, right? And we're
Well,
back with Stratton's question about what the ministry has been looking for.
Well, at that time, we had one conversation with the ministry about testing in June to enable the players to play. We didn't have any more, and that is myself and Mike Henry, who is the chairman, and Pat Garrett, who is the general manager. We were the ones leading the effort to keep the game playing and keep it and having it completed at that time. I'm saying the main purpose that would have served it would have provided a template.
Yeah.
We would have made mistakes and we would have had successes.
I believe concerns perhaps are now growing, right? Much more than before because of the fear of the spikes and so on and so forth.
Let me put it this way. One of my first
Exactly.
encounters with Carvel, I don't know if he remembers this. We were at Sabina Park and the rain was falling. And I was getting miserable about the thing has gone, so let us replace it. Carvel was saying then, you have to wait till the thing has completely disappeared. Once you leave the field, then you can't come back till that. So in this instance, Carvel, it's a case where if you had continued, it would have been a better situation as to how we treated it now.
Yes,
because once you leave, the difficulty is to come back.
The comeback, right?
It is to come back. And then the manner in which it was done, you see, I don't want to spend a lot of time on it. But for me, and I use the word often in relationship to this administration, it was corruptly done. The cancellation was led by people who are individuals.
To be clear, the administration is football and not government.
Correct.
No, but I want to hear you because you are a man who speaks calmly but often tellingly.
Rationally.
And yes, and you choose your words advisedly. So my
Yeah.
ears pricked up when you said it was
No,
corruptly done.
there were clubs who
I
were
want you to explain that. What was
there
corruptly done?
there were clubs who had interest in maintaining their status at the CONCACAF level. And they are the ones who started the suggestion that we abandon the competition.
Chat your chat, Carvel.
Because
This
in
is-
doing that,
Mhm.
they would have retained their status as the qualifiers to CONCACAF competition.
I see.
And I mean, I say this because they cannot contest it. They started. We suspended when the COVID reared its head in Jamaica in March. We suspended further games and started planning the completion, and got to the point where it was that we would have completed in July. I then got wind of some underhanded ways that the JFF was seeking to cancel the competition. And it is because I'm vice president of CASAFA that the confidential communication came to my attention, because what they were doing, they were writing to the various parish presidents and saying strictly confidential. And what were they being strictly confidential about? Canceling the competition within 24 hours of this confidential letter. Well, they didn't achieve the 24 hours because presidents wanted to know what was this all about and so on. And so they pleaded the COVID case, right? But it had to be kept confidential among that small group of people, gentlemen, that are the leadership of the JFF. And after they got, with the exception, as you can imagine, of CASAFA, and it was Centerhand, they did not agree to cancellation. But when they got everybody else to agree, they said they had the majority. In fact, the president and I came on Sportsmax television, and he said it was unanimous, and I said unanimous is 100%.
Right.
Right? It was not 100%. So stop telling the people that it was unanimous.
Because subsequently another person came out and said that everybody agreed.
Right, which was not true either.
Yeah.
And then now they went on to say that they had consulted with all the stakeholders. Well, you went about that surreptitious cancellation approval among the parish presidents on a confidential basis. So when did you consult and with whom? Not true. What they did is that after they came to that decision, they went into the following week talking to other people, clubs among that group, other clubs, I'll put it this way, other clubs among that group, because as I said before, clubs were involved in that conversation before they came to that decision. And all of this is facts. Then they got other clubs who were still contemplating playing football and finishing competition. They got hold of those clubs to tell them that, well, there is no money and they will give them money later on and so on.
All right.
And got them to agree.
Hold on, Carvel. Fine. We are here now.
Right, we are here now. That's why I was saying.
What are we going to do?
Well, I have stepped away from all of that kerfuffle. So I don't have, as I told you earlier, the answers for you.
I'm asking about your own thoughts.
Well, they should have gotten back to the ministry. I don't know what conversations they've been having with the ministry. But they should have used the evidence that we have, and even if we had to consult with the people abroad as to the details of their position. You see, another weakness on our part, gentlemen, is that it is not the government in those countries that stopped the football. It was the football organizations who came up and then in consultation with their governments. As you see now, there is lockdown in England, but there's no lockdown in the football.
Yeah.
Right? So it is really the clubs that operate the leagues through the companies that the clubs have for the various leagues. The National Association do not manage any league. The national associations, they don't manage the leagues. It's the clubs that form a company, such as in England, the most popular is the English Premier League company, right?
And clearly negotiations now must be feverish, at a feverish point, given the fact that sponsorship is growing.
Sponsorship is announced to be growing.
Right, for a likely, well, announced.
Hold on, that's another
Another
point.
point, announced to be
No,
growing.
Is there a
No,
reason
I
not to take
believe?
that at face
No,
value?
I say that, gentlemen, because when myself and others were responsible, no announcement was made until all the clubs were notified and the proposed agreement read by them all for them to sign on. They will, some of them will deny this because that's their nature. But the documents were brought to the table. Everybody was asked to review the documents and make their comments, and then negotiations were concluded. We see a lot of signings taking place. Not one document has been presented to clubs.
Are they grandstanding?
There's a lot of PR happening right
God
now,
have mercy. Again.
right? But,
As the man says.
I have to be clear and honest.
You normally.
And I'm not being negatively honest.
Right.
I'm being honest, right? There has not been one agreement presented to the club so far.
One more point, Carvel. You couldn't have done that. Let you speak to this, if but for a minute. The PLC.
Yes.
And it's been put to pasture, as it were.
Yes.
Satisfied with the replacement?
Let me say this honestly again. I stepped away because I disagree that we should have independent board members. It doesn't exist anywhere in football, anywhere else in football. And it doesn't exist from when the suggestion came. Right? If you recall, there was a committee formed, headed by a non-football person. And that's from whence the suggestion came.
Carvel.
But if you notice, the body that that person is president of does not have an independent member on its board.
Carvel. Some people will say, Lord man, it attracts more appeal.
It does?
You know me. I'm
my
cheeky from time to time.
My objection to independent persons being directors, there's a difference, gentlemen. For instance, the English Premier League will engage consultants with specific responsibilities that would then report to the board. They are not board members. Yeah? So if it was felt that we needed external persons who would be able to enhance our efforts at sponsorships and in any other areas, then we should employ them. The problem we've always had, we don't have the money. After the clubs consume the majority of the money and we pay for the administration of the league, there's no more money.
Carver, clearly this is an area that we have to go into, because we are here to put information out to the public who can be gagged and blindfolded and all of that. We need to get the real truth.
And on that score, we have to return to another engagement at Encounter. Right? So you know we're going to come back for you. for you to be taking the field with us again. Because
yes, and the problem they have is that whenever I speak the truth, they regard it as being negative, etc. The truth is, I had to say in a separate interview that I was concerned. Somewhere, it would have been somewhere in either late September or October, after it was posited that we would restart in November. And I said then, but we don't have any money. And there was a whole heap of,
let's leave it there, Carvel. We could go on and on. Version
like,
2 coming
like I
on.
said, this game has no final whistle.
Yeah.
So we'll return. Right?
Thank you ever so much.
you're welcome, dude.
All right, good.
Wow.
Listen up. We are chat.
You have to know school keep.
More chat in a while. Michael? Michael Hall? All right, we'll take another break. And
shit. Yes,
All
all
right,
right.
that we have searched for him around the corners and around the halls, and now he has been found. We apologize for the delay. Michael, hello? We've lost you again? We wa- All right. We wanted to talk to Michael since he was the director of operations, right? Of the Caribbean Premier League. And he has been protagonist, chief protester. We, the JFF, and their whole operations, right? One-man placard bearing protester, even at the JFF headquarters. Michael?
Good afternoon, Curtis.
Yes.
Good afternoon, Stratton. How are you, my friends?
Good to be a transformer. How delightful to hear the change.
Listen to me now. When you were a child, they used to look for you and try to find you and you have to play hide and seek, no?
Yes, I do apologize for that. I am on some care duties with my dear mama who has returned.
Okay, no, indeed.
Wonderful.
Good
But I'm
son.
free now. I'm free now.
Good son. All right, listen. We can't be talking about football possibly taking the field again. We can't be talking about what is to be decided on as the template. And we just finished talking to Carvel, so we ought to be talking to you for a number of reasons. As Director of Operations for Caribbean Premier Cricket League, right? You're the man who executed the COVID-19 protocols for the last 2020, no? And I was...
So I am told.
So you're told. And I was just telling Stratton that the last time I checked my Facebook page, a few weeks ago, there was a picture of a certain gentleman, again with his placard at New Kingston.
That's a new edition?
At the JFF office. Yeah, he went there before.
Okay.
And he went there again.
I think Curtis, not to be nitpicking, I think what happened there was that someone may have reposted.
Oh, you reposted. Okay.
Yes.
Because they felt it was only fitting given the developments at that time.
Timely.
Possibly.
All right.
But certainly during the pandemic, I would not want to venture out.
All right. We have read that you have offered your help, right? You're willing to, though as chief protagonist and placard-bearing protester, you were offering your help. You were offering to help the JFF.
Yes.
Anybody reach out to you? Anybody call you? Or them still say you must stand in the north corner?
No, I have not been approached formally by the Jamaica Football Federation, gentlemen. Perhaps there are some who will argue that it is I who should reach out to them and offer. But it's only because I was being spoken to in other forums, or fora rather, in the media space.
Yes.
And I made the offer in response to a direct question from the persons who were speaking to me. So I figured that would have been sufficient. I mean, I don't think it's a secret. It's been in both print and electronic media that I've said that I'm more than happy to help. Gratis.
Without being rude, Michael, if it is that you were in charge of a successful bubble in the CPL, which attracted players from all around the world, and it went through successfully, incident-free, and I am in a bind, would not it be part of my remit to seek some advice from you, given if I have an interest
from more than one association too?
In restarting the game.
From more than one association.
Yes, and if I'm honest, I have received calls from administrators in other sports who have asked me to share my experiences with them.
Yeah,
I mean, I have been more than happy to share with them even the documentation which guided, which guided our tournament. So yes, I have been approached by others.
All right,
Unsolicited.
but all right, but let's say this. We're told that this week is the week. Something has to give, right? So behind the curtains, everybody's talking to everybody because this week has to be when we either decide, gentlemen, we take the field or not, right? So there are pressure points building everywhere. Mr. Hall, what do you think football needs to do? What do you think is not happening? And how should they proceed?
So I'm really sorry. You did say that you just spoke with Carvel Stewart, yes?
Yes.
I'm very sorry that I missed that conversation.
Oh, it was engaging.
But notwithstanding. I think what is instructive so far, gentlemen, in terms of what has transpired between the Federation and the Ministry of Health and Wellness. And it goes back to the very first announcement of a restart of the Premier League, where people were seen signing this and that and press conference and so on. But what instructed me was that there was no one from the Ministry of Health either in the photograph or in attendance. And that sent up a red flag right away. There have been, I believe, 2 false starts, right?
Yes.
And before I go any further, please let me put on public record to say how excited I am at the Christopher Williams-led group who seem to be doing great things in terms of mobilizing funding for the sport of football. Because clearly, gentlemen, it's the money that makes the mayor run, right?
To a smart mind like yours, Michael, I must put you what Carvel said in the previous interview, that all these announcements was there, but no document was presented.
The announcements in terms of restarting the league?
In terms of the funding that is there.
Oh? Well, at least in the various announcements in print and electronic media, I saw photographs where the sponsors and Mr. Williams were both seen together with a document and pens and so on. So unless that was merely symbolic, I'm not at liberty to say. But I base my kudos and congratulations on the fact that there has been many things to suggest that this is actually money that is coming into the sport. Anyway, that aside,
right.
I want to suggest, gentlemen, and again, this is without the benefit of having heard the conversation with Carvel, so maybe something has happened that I'm not aware of.
Yes.
But I am going to make a prediction which I think may not sit very well with football fans, but I just do not see how the Federation will be able to conduct a tournament here in Jamaica, given the stance of the ministry vis-a-vis other sports, for the extended period of time that it would take to complete the league. Notwithstanding things that we have heard about, the season can be truncated and we can fit in the number of games and so on and so forth. It goes beyond that. To me, it goes to the question of how are you going to keep the 600 or so persons, and I arrive at that number by an estimate of 50 persons per club, right? Including the squad and the coaches and the management staff, etc., etc. 600 persons. How are you going to keep them secure from being exposed to community spread in their various communities, testing them perhaps once a week? Maybe they could get away with once every 2 weeks. Even so, that's 600 times 7 times 2, that's 8,400 tests in a 7-month period, right? Assuming that's
the cost could be astronomical.
Okay, so 8,400 tests times whatever it is, $150. I mean, I don't really know. That's maybe 1.2 million US, something like that. And unless the Federation can either A, get that sponsored as part of the whole sponsorship package, which would eat up everything that Chris and his team is trying to put together, or unless the tests can be donated as part of the government's contribution to getting the sport back, then I just don't see how it's going to happen. And if I'm honest with you, I think that perhaps the Federation, given the importance of this calendar year vis-a-vis
World Cup.
our quest to get to the World Cup in 2022 and certainly to do well at the Gold Cup this year, because both of those are huge money earners, right? And hopefully if the team is successful at both competitions to whatever degree, the monies that come in will again help to sort of keep the sport afloat and perhaps even revitalize it. I think that the Federation may be better off going to the Ministry of Health and suggesting to them that what they are proposing to do is to create a series of bubbles 30 days long, right, for the best of local footballers available, yes, and to keep them in this bubble for 30 days at the Center of Excellence, the Horace Burrell Center of Excellence, right, and make that the fulcrum of the preparation of our national senior men's team, our beloved Reggae Boys, to participate and do well at the Gold Cup, and then beyond that. The situation will be such that as you get into, if you're within the camp and there's a FIFA match window coming up for a friendly, if you bring in overseas players, they are playing in scenarios where they are constantly tested, where they are free of the virus, and they could easily come into the bubble. And there are protocols to ensure that when they come in, things are okay. But I think that would be the best thing for the Federation to suggest. I just don't see how, and it comes down to money, I just don't see how they could afford to play a league in the conditions that would satisfy the Ministry of Health, that they're not putting either those taking part or the wider public at some sort of risk.
How different is our situation than, say, the English Premier League, where I understand that players do go back to their community and come back, and when they are tested, they stay for 5 to 7 days, etc.
And then go.
What is the difference in our situation?
The difference, Stratton, quite frankly, is economic. Again, it comes down to who's going to pay for all of these tests every week, right? You play a match, you go home for 2 days, you have to get tests when you come back. I mean, we just don't have the money or the infrastructure to maintain the safety and security of the 600 persons involved for that extended period of time. That's just my humble opinion.
Yes.
But we can very easily create a bubble for, let's say, 40 persons, which would be the elite local players, X amount of coaching staff, X amount of admin staff, and then venue staff. And all of those persons obviously would have to commit to staying in the bubble at the Center of Excellence for the duration of that preparation period.
At a cost?
And then
at a cost?
Well, listen.
No, would they have to pay these people for their time?
Yes, because yes.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
But absolutely. Yeah, but absolutely. So the point I'm making is that
I was just thinking against the background of the per diem situation which we have. So
well, we have to try and move. But as best we can. But
it is well thought.
And I take your position because this is a model for a greater good.
Yes.
For the qualification of these tournaments, right?
Which has certain incentives to it.
Which clearly has certain incentives to it, right?
There are phases in which you could do this, all right? And I'll just, if for the benefit of you guys and those listening, phase one would be sort of data collection, right? Where you advise the ministry, you give them the cohort of, the master cohort of everyone who is going to be in there with all their personal data, right? And between the time that you have identified who these persons are and when they actually check in to the Center of Excellence, every person who is in the cohort must sign a document where they agree to quarantine at home and submit to temperature readings twice daily so that you can build a data bank on all of these people, right? Phase two would be to travel to and from the initial testing, because everybody has to be tested, right?
Right.
And so you would identify a point where you centrally collect everybody and return them to maybe the JFF offices. I don't know. You get 2 sanitized buses provided by the JUTC. The drivers are in PPE. They go to UE, which is where I assume all the tests will be done, right? And then you go back to the collection point and you go home and continue to quarantine in home until you get the results. Phase 3, you make sure that the venue is now being sanitized and prepared, the entire place, right? The bedrooms, the dining areas, the meeting rooms, and all of that. Phase 4 is when you travel to the camp for the check-in. Again, there's a central collection point. You have your sanitized buses, all the bags and equipment are sanitized, etc., right? By this time, obviously, anybody getting on that bus to go to the camp has returned a negative test, right? And then phase 5 in the camp, you have all of the protocols that
being observed.
That seems like a sound template.
We lost it.
We've lost him? Hello?
Michael?
All right. Until we try and find Michael again.
But
this
that's
is
a ready-made situation, and
right.
it's priceless.
It is.
Yeah, and I can't see why consultation
unworkable.
would take place. Yes.
We need to get everybody around the table. We'll take a quick break and we'll be right back. All right. Shatan. Oh, lose Mikey. Yes. Because that conversation was so revealing.
Up to the point, a 5-part plan as to how we could get football going in lieu of not having the league, having the national.
We promise you, our audience, our listeners, our viewers, we'll have Michael again.
Concluding.
Yes. In another program, concluding that 5-point plan, as he was suggesting, yes, that we could tackle how we could re-engage. We want to discuss, because this program, we have been talking about the pandemic. We're now talking about issues of football, still with the pandemic in terms of how we return to action. But there is something else that has been disturbing. And it was all over social media about a week or two ago. We are not getting into that pickle Cascas story as it was between a particular player and administrators of the JFF negotiating
For the
remunerations
with the Saudi Arabia.
for the Saudi Arabian doubleheader, right? But the issue can't be locked away in the locker room because there's the question of conduct and civility from all parties.
And clarification.
And
So we choose to go to a former president of the JFF and who's experience in international matters, having been associated with, I think, CONCACAF and even FIFA itself.
on how we should be engaging each other. The players, the administrators, what strengthens relationships, right? Like as we said before, it's not the Cascas.
Tony James, welcome.
Tony James?
Yes, boss.
Yes, sir. Happy New Year to you.
And the same to both of you.
You know?
You have viewed this thing.
Hold on a second. If we could talk,
yes,
and if we should talk about all the rumblings that we have had with Tony over the years.
Yes, you have a history.
Yes, himself and myself. But as we were saying this morning in our little chit chat, we never left the conversation bitter, nor feeling that because there was dissent and disagreement, right? I was the enemy at large, right?
Yes.
And this is the air and atmosphere now whenever players and administrators have to meet, have to discuss, have to negotiate player well-being, right? They're prism apart, and everybody is the enemy. Tony, shed some light on all this. Now, how do we get back together? How do we mend? The element of trust, is it all gone?
Well, you see, let me start with the 5 o'clock discussions we used to have because my wife still wants to know who Curtis Myrie is. Wow. So I don't know if it's Curtis or Sheila, but I know it's Curtis. But
all right.
You have to give a prayer. You have to give a thought and a prayer for the JFF because when you look at it, let me see if I can set a context to it because that leaked conversation really is deplorable and it really pains my heart to think that that is what we have coming out of a national program. But if you look historically on the football, JFF have always been the national scapegoats for an increasingly expensive national program. So you have to look at the genesis of the issue. And this, I think, as I said, lies with a continuously expanding national program which becomes more expensive each year. Secondly, the financial structure of the JSS. Thirdly, the legacy of debt left behind. And fourthly, the prioritization of political objectives over technical objectives. So if you look back on where we started with Howard Hamilton, which few remember him as the instigator of, this is about 2 or 3 decades ago, the National Lottery, the SBF Fund, that kind of approach which said to us, well, at the time, our in-sports chairman, who was Vivian Rochester, said to us, everything is a zero budget, things times are hard. It just shows the resilience of sports, that we could come out of that period and sit down with our sports prime ministers like the Honorable Edward Seaga and the Honorable Michael Manley, and a recognition by government that for Jamaica's sports to exploit the amazing talent of our young sportsmen and women and to excel in the international arena. The Sporting Association has needed a long-term financial, budgetary, structural support that would enable proper planning and a good governance structure. We had all of that, and it has been taken away because as a nation, we are short-term, one day at a time, 9-day wonder people. When you look at the current situation that we are in here now, you have a JFF who are cooperative, yes, but they have a sense of entitlement. They have a very weak leadership style. At the very head of it, you have a lack of administrative skill sets and a lack of experience, which is necessary at this level. And you have a very sharp learning curve because international football and structures are constantly improving. And this JFF have inherited a legacy of prioritizing the political over the technical, a legacy of president for life rather than professional administration.
And you're not being the enemy.
Not at all. No, I don't have that in my heart. I don't have that in my heart.
Earlier that is a difficult.
I don't.
Yes.
When you look on a person who we miss really is a Horace Reed who kind of bridged the gap between the technical and the political.
Right.
We don't have that. So if you can understand where we are now, you have to go to the solutions which are coming, which need a massive amount of cooperation, a complete involvement of the football fraternity, and you look on what is in front of us and you can see the solution.
But isn't it made harder, Tony, by our squandering of the goodwill? We reached the World Cup, we had a little...
No, well, I'm going to come to that. I'm going to come to that because I'm going to come to that because what I'm trying to show you is that give the JFF credit with all the knocks they have gotten. They're trying. And we have to, regardless of what has gone, we have to look ahead whether this JFF or another, the solutions are in front of us. If you look on the administrative part of it, FIFA, Carvel calls it a corrupt construct. I have to quote him. Where you have 13 people who have abrogated all the rights and responsibilities and hold the JFF in a political headlock, which they can't get out of. And you look on the FIFA looking on, and FIFA is saying absolutely not. And if you look on Mike, I had a meeting with Mike, we had a meeting as a club with Mike recently, and Mike.
That's the Manchester FA.
I'm sorry?
That's the Manchester FA?
Los Perfectos, Manchester FA, and the JFF hierarchy, trying to resolve issues of 2 years standing on a basis which says to them, listen, we're not your enemy, We're here to tell you what you're doing is corrupt, it is wrong, it is killing football, and trying to convince you that if you return to your constitution, return to rules and regulations, you'll have an easier path. We're not trying to replace anybody. And if you look on FIFA is saying the exact same thing.
All right.
FIFA is saying administratively, you can't have a 13-man. You can't have a 13-man administration.
You have to satisfy 7 people and you're back for life.
Yes, and that ought not to be. That should never have been. But I want to place this impasse right back at the center circle. There's always a clash about money, players, administrators, the administrations being held to ransom even at times is the clamor. The players believe that they are really held to ransom because nothing is never negotiated before they leave, and it keeps happening again and again and again, to the point now where we are having all of this spill, all of this boil on social media, right? And people cussing and carrying on. How do we fix this?
Well, let me broaden it. Let me broaden that. So
yes,
you said the solution. One is administrative.
Yes.
One is technical, because again, CONCACAF and FIFA have mandated a new professional layer over our amateur layer, which will advance significantly our technical structure and is the long-term solution to Jamaica's football. So if you look at those two issues, we know where we're going. Number 3 is the issue of debt, of legacy of debt. And FIFA's recent COVID relief fund would have given significant assistance to debt relief. You need other efforts, and you have to commend the GFF in reaching out to find professionals to interface in the financial sector, which will resolve these issues over time. But as you are saying now, you have to compare these thrusts.
Right.
Look at what Prince William's approach is. It seems to be bearing fruit. That's positive. Look at what happened to Hugh Menzies. That is disgusting. That is negative. That is disgraceful. You carry a group of Jamaican patriots who carry football to a level, women's football to a level we never dreamed possible in the shortest time possible to qualify for a World Cup. And look how we deal with them. So what I'm saying to you basically, if you can look at the solutions going forward, if we can get the football fraternity to be moving in the same direction, you can tackle the player issues. Because the players seem to have two issues. One, they are saying to you, listen, we have a short shelf life, and we have to maintain our professional standards. Sounds good, but it's in the context of teams that playing against like USA, Canada, and Mexico. You're talking about US dollars. That's difficult. The second thing they have is the question of the certainty of being paid, the issue of trust. At whatever negotiated fees are agreed on, at all times, GFF do not come up to scratch in dealing with what they themselves have agreed on. And I'm saying to you, if you can resolve what I spoke to before, you can also resolve that. The only difference is the rest is in the hands of the GFF. This resolution needs money. Again, if you look back, it needs money. It needs consultation. It needs a negotiated agreement. It needs trust. It needs national pride, because nobody's listening to the GFF. What the GFF is saying is quite correct. They are saying that, listen, club structure and our international structure is what has allowed you local footballers to parade your skills abroad and earn foreign exchange. Come back and help us now. They are saying, listen, we have to fund
Is
this.
it broaching those terms, Tony, or is a little shenanigans as we have heard that word in football?
I think it's embarrassing to listen to that tape and realize how advanced the national players have become in terms of the local players' growth, their professionalism, international exposure. Completely outweighs that of the GFF, who don't have those
What
things.
is worrying me at this time, Tony? We spoke to Carvel before you, we speak to you now. And we don't get that kind of thinking with the present administration. It's pure quarrel, cascas, and situation where, it's not taking the football to where it ought to go. It is not going hand in hand with the professionalism you speak to of the footballers themselves, as you heard the young man speak to. How can you have a negotiation where there's nothing written, no email? It's just word of mouth? You have to do better than that.
Yes, sorry.
Go ahead.
No, because how can we have it? Because we have administrators who don't have the experience and don't have the administrative skill set.
That's what I'm saying. We spoke to
you were saying this
the man down in Trinidad there a couple of weeks ago, Jack Warner. And his question was, him don't know nobody in administration in football is Jamaica. No heavyweight, no there, no power, no there. We have lost it. Have we?
No, we haven't lost it, man. We haven't lost it. The thing is that we haven't lost it because you see, looking back, I think we can take some of the blame, When you look back on people like Ben Williams, Wesmore Thomas, when you look at the warriors that came for football in those years.
Yes.
Now, look at rural football now. Rural football has just become apathetic. They just accept anything that's given to them. They're not involved in the administration of the game.
How much is the Peter principle affecting football? Where people seemingly are in top positions but in the wrong position. How much is that affecting the administration? Competence and effectiveness and efficiency.
You know the ironical thing. You don't have to be that competent to lead football properly, What you need to have is somebody that has a passion for the game, a vision for the game, and a love for the game. Once you have that, and you are willing to, once you have that, you will assemble people around you who can help the game, who you can trust, you yourself can trust, not going to stab you in the back. And this is the problem with this GFF.
Yeah, but isn't that the heart of the problem? Assembling people around you, because you are seeing duppies everywhere who want the position now and all that sort of thing. Isn't that what is spoiling the game?
Well, let us, as I started, let us say a prayer for them now. Let us hope that 2021 will lead to a change. Chris Williams is a massive change, It's a massive change. We need to now follow that up with sitting down with the stakeholders and understanding that you don't have that right. You don't even have the 13 geniuses. I don't even think one or two actually invest in the game. You're really very right to be taking on the responsibilities of this paradigm shift. without saying, listen, let us all start over. Let us all get in the same basket. Let us call the stakeholders to an AGM. Let us thrash out this nonsense of the Premier League. Because it is nonsense, you know. It is political. It has no...
I understand, but I want to get one question in, Tony. Sorry to interrupt, but we're out of time. But you have to get in this. Speak to the problems that we have been having with traveling arrangements. What is lacking and why are we not seeking help in that area?
Travel arrangements is a very technical, specialized thing. If you want to give JFF the benefit of the doubt...
Beyond love and passion for the game.
Oh, Lord, I tell you, I've lost my shirt off that, but it's okay. Because I'm telling you, we have specialists in Jamaica who can deal with national teams. They are specialists. National teams need a travel system that understands the game. You have to know when you eat, when you sleep, how you arrive, what the journey is, how you break the journey, and most importantly for the JFF, to make sure that it is the best possible costing. FIFA have done it, and failed. FIFA have done what the JFF is doing, Go to online, pick the cheapest fare. Some players, some from the Caribbean, went for a meeting and end up in Alaska, going to FIFA in Zurich via Alaska. When they came to FIFA to the meeting, they missed the meeting, they fell asleep. It's not JFF alone. You can't use a credit card and online things to deal with travel arrangements.
It's not just what is fanciful, eh?
It is, and it's not what appears in front of you as the cheapest price.
Good.
Captain, their predecessor was very clear on this, and what he would do is make sure there are places where you can put your pot on the fire because you're going to under 17 in India in June. You can sit down with a travel agency 6 months in advance and get a fare which you couldn't believe.
Refreshing.
But you wait 1 month before, or you come like the women's team when you arrive in Miami to go. The price has tripled. You get no benefit.
Guess what? I hear your wife calling. And it's, I hear your wife calling. And please tell her it's Curtis and Stratton, not Sheila.
All right, T. Good
So,
to hear from you.
You
Thanks
take
a
care,
lot.
man.
Right, we'll talk to you again.
Thanks.
All the best for 2021.
Thank you, sir. Real chat. We are chat to chat.
Yes.
Back in a moment. We're closing down. Just a few minutes to the limit at 6. But guess what? The pot just hot.
Yeah, man, the thing bubbling.
It's bubbling. It's bubbling, right?
Yeah.
And Rosemary's all in white.
Wow. Anthony James.
Says she's
Carvel
pure.
Stewart. Right.
Mr. Wright, you got it right? The noted sports journalist, yes. Yes, all due respect, who pointedly stakes strike at various issues. Sir Nodley, welcome. Happy New Year.
Thanks very much, and same to you, Black Santa, Sir Strand. Always a pleasure.
Yes, sir.
You know, I'm going to deal with you afterwards. Nodley, Nodley, this whole thing, you know what we're talking about. This whole social media scuffle. That tape. Yes, we're not getting into the cascas, as we said before. But we must examine, we must really take stock of what it does to the body politic of the game and of the sport. Right? Or we're going to fix this, brethren. Share your thoughts and ideas. How do we move forward beyond all of this impasse?
Well, do you have a whole day?
No, we just have about a few minutes.
Or so.
But you know, I don't normally work very well in such a short time. My record speaks for me. But
Yes.
I will try to facilitate.
Yes.
Firstly, it is clear that those who are entrusted to lead our football into a new age are just not capable. The president is weak. He lacks leadership abilities. His general secretary is incompetent and thinks he's competent. So we have a problem. I think the body is top heavy, literally, but it's not brain heavy. It's just weight, dead weight. And I'm sure you would have heard the exchange between, well, among Damian Lowe and the JFF hierarchy, and that is how they operate.
I was struck by the fact that it was 4-1 at the same time.
Yes.
Gentlemen, we are not going there.
Yes.
We are not going there.
Believe
Believe me, right at the center circle is something that is weighing us all down because we love the sport, right? So I'm listening. Yes, there's always the critique of the incompetence. Fine. Take me along. Lord, we have been reaching out to the JFF for them to speak for themselves. It's difficult getting them on the field sometimes, but continue, Nodley. Let me hear this, because I want to know how we'll fix this.
Well, firstly, hopefully FIFA will do us a favor by getting rid of Ricketts in round about June, because there's a case coming up where he libeled and slandered Ainsley Lowe, another Lowe. He doesn't seem to have any luck with the Lowes. So maybe about 2 years ago, he made some unfortunate statements about Ainsley Lowe, insinuating
in an election runoff.
Pardon?
In an election runoff. Yeah?
Yes. He insinuated that he was playing on the wrong pitch. And that led to a court case which he didn't challenge. Long and short of it, he insinuated that the man is a homosexual. And as a result, that's one of the most dangerous things that anyone could say about someone in Jamaica. That could lead to them being ostracized, being damaged personally, professionally, and otherwise, and maybe even physically. So a case was filed. He didn't challenge the case, and FIFA has it in their statutes that there should be no form of discrimination, be it gender, religious, sexual orientation, or practice, and so forth. But yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I want us to be even blinkered with this, right?
All right.
I make no pass nor excuse for the administration. I want us to have blinkered focus on the fact
and how we fix it,
that we are careening off the curb. That if we have, well, let's go back to the number 4-1. If we have whatever the number, all of this boil, all of this blaze, it's damaging the game. How do we cool the fires? And don't just tell me it's getting rid of everybody at the top administratively. No. The engaging you, Nodley, because me for one, and I'm sure Stratton too, completely respect your mind. What may we put as a blueprint in going forward?
Okay. Let us look at something else that bears a close resemblance to what we should have. The professional body that is responsible now for our Premier League. They recently appointed people who are qualified to do that, Christopher Williams and team. They know how to run business. They know how to raise money. One of the issues that we have with the Federation is that they cannot attract anyone who will want to invest money in the sport. There's a trust issue. And in the recording that we heard, that was made clear that they can't be trusted.
Right.
The view is this, that they are hustlers and that there are people in there who wants to eat a food. There's no one there who can... Remember, when they came into power, when they went against Ambassador Stuart Stevenson, who presented a manifesto. There was no manifesto presented by the other team which indicated an absence of a plan. Nothing that has been done has indicated otherwise. So we're left to believe that there is no plan for the sport going forward. Additionally, there's no evidence of any of these gentlemen having any great interest in developing the sport. I don't know. Well, Ricketts was loosely affiliated with a football team in Clarendon. Yes, he did take over the leadership of the parish association, but even before that, Clarendon had a long history of producing quality young players, and that would have been largely because of the Englishman John Green and Mr. Plummer. But even then, football went downhill under Ricketts. And I'm not even trying to knock him, I'm just stating the fact.
Until the next Congress, until we vote, we have the Gold Cup, we have the World Cup qualifiers. We're going to have more negotiations, more meetings. Hold on. We're going to have...
I'm not trying to gallop away. I'm sorry.
Yeah, man.
More meetings.
We're going to have more meetings. We want to cool the fires that are raging. So right now, trust me, personalities, I'm not even interested in right here and now. I am interested in the process of healing if it is at all possible. Is it?
You know what?
Is it, Nodley?
Constitutional reform.
Yes. Is it?
Well, there is that. FIFA will help us with that too, because there's a representation made about that, and I believe that that will come at some point this year. Because as you know, it's about 13 people who elected the leadership.
Quite so.
That will now be broadened. It may not be as big as it used to be, as in 100 and odd people, but it may be closer to about 60 or 40 when it is through. So you will have the club owners will become a part of the process. I understand, as well as other stakeholders. So it will no longer just be one person. So a smaller body is easy to control, and they then could choose their friends and associates. So there is that. Additionally, I don't know if you're aware that the World Cup qualification starts this year, and there has not been a plan, a marketing plan that has come out. Sir Curtis, I would have seen you on the battlefield doing your thing in previous times, so you would have been familiar with what takes place.
You know how that happened?
I can imagine.
I'll tell you, and for the benefit of the listeners, the late Captain Horace Burrell, right? And Stratton was a member of my team. Clyde Mackenzie was a member of my team. I just said to him one day, there was a press conference, and I said to him, I'm interested now beyond journalism in marketing, in advertising, and so on. And I believe that where we are now with football, we can't keep telling people, be at the National Stadium, blah, 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 blah. So we have to be addressing other variables to pull people to the stadium. And he just said to me, all right, Myrie, you always knock me, put your money where your mouth is. So that's how that happened. So
you presented a plan.
Yes, and clearly, you know Burrell, you have to present your plan to him, right? And that's how we were engaged. So I take your point. You're not seeing any of that.
Not at all. I don't see a high-powered team of experts, be with different areas of expertise, because this is a product now that we'll have to market. This is a product now that we'll have to manage. We have to execute a whole plan. This is now something that represents us as a people. So it is. Maybe it will require a similar approach from someone, from you or someone of like mind to go to them and say no, let us market this, because there's no marketing body within the JFF that's responsible for that. There's none. That is non-existent. And from my own understanding, that instead of building out, they are contracting in terms of the expertise that they have within, because to my knowledge, Mrs. Rose Brown, Janice Rose Brown, who comes with a wealth of experience, and some people may have differing views, but she has a wealth of experience and competency.
I'll tell you what, and this is the final word, because we promised Erica Virtue she would have the last word. So we've got to leave the field now. But I'll tell you this, I take a number of your points, but we will have to straighten, I think, be engaging persons we revere in the game, even outside of the game, to bring the factions together, to say to them, listen, let's discuss particular policies in terms of how, and let's just discuss a particular formats in getting together to negotiate.
There needs to be a willingness of all concerned
Right,
to
yes.
be a part of this.
Yes. Nodley, we're going to talk to you again,
Well, I'm always available. So as long as it's you in a black Santa and surf strap, I'm only a call away.
All right, my brother. Good.
Thank you.
Good. The last word when we return with Erica Virtue. Don't go anywhere. The final segment of this year's first edition of Real Chat, and what a show it has been.
Yes, and she has the last word.
Erica Virtue has the last word. Woman who holds no tongue in providing fair public opinion and commentary. Journalism stalwart Erica Virtue, and she is indeed a stalwart. On the passing of tourism industry giant Gordon Butch Stewart, we reached out to her because she has a particular story to tell. Welcome, Erica. How are you? Erica? Is she there?
You need this story.
No, we need the story. So we'll be right back. We'll be right back. We're not leaving Erica, right?
Okay.
We promised her the last word. Erica.
Did she hear you?
Yes.
Introduction?
Yes. Did you just hear all that I said?
No, sir.
All right. Well, may I say,
Rewind.
shall we say it again?
Rewind.
Rewind. The
All right,
last
sir.
word now, the final segment of Real Chat. The last word with a woman who holds no tongue in providing fair public opinion and commentary. Journalism stalwart Erica Virtue on the passing of tourism industry giant Gordon Butch Stewart. She has a particular story to tell. Share it with us, Erica. Share it with us.
All right. So I'm grateful for the opportunity to speak about Gordon Butch Stewart. You would have seen from a post I made on Facebook. I think I made 5 points.
Right.
And
I think you made 6.
6. Oh, there you go.
Right.
There you go.
Right.
But you know, if you are ever in a room with Butch Stewart, you are not going to stop laughing. He's that kind of personality. He he was just so much fun to be around. I mean, I don't sit in the room with movers and shakers, so I don't know when plans are being made for whatever conquering. But when he was with us as journalists, when I worked at the Observer, late 2002, late 2003 to 2011, he was so much fun to be around. He was never intimidated by people saying no to him, by reporters saying no to him. I don't know where some people get this idea from that you can't say no, or to say no, it means that you are, it's a personal thing. That was never the case with Butch Stewart. He wanted the truth, and if the truth was no, it is no, and he accepted it. I think a lot of the times with great people, great personalities, great visionaries like Butch Stewart, what you had were the problems is not so much with them, but with the gatekeepers. The gatekeepers believe that they could tell somebody like Butch Stewart your story better than you could tell him. And I found out that he wanted to hear from you. He didn't want to hear from them. And he was very, very kind. I'm telling you, one of the traditions at Jamaica Observer when I worked there was that every Easter, the staff, editorial staff, and I think it went to the administrative staff as well, they would be given an Easter bun. I am not sure if it came with cheese, but when I went to the Observer, bun was what you got. And I'm telling you, when I left the Observer, 2 years after I left the Observer, I was still calling and asking for my bun. And my bun was there, you know, and that was appreciation. And it didn't matter how small you were, whether you were the person who washed the cars or whether you were the head of the editorial department. The bun came with your name on it. It's your bun. It was yours to, you know, to do whatever you want. And there was nothing that you went to Butch Stewart with as an employee that he looked at a file and say, okay, you are not exactly part of staff. You're a contractual employee, and therefore I'm going to have to consider somebody who is on staff over you. I never found that. I never had to make too many trips in that capacity, but I knew I had to do so on one occasion, and I felt no different from anybody else. And so my great regret is that Butch Stewart represented the last, I think, of a great generation of dreamers. He could sell you anything. So you bought into a dream, and that dream, he drove that dream with a passion. And that's what I loved about him. It didn't matter what it was. He was passionate about it, and he sold you with passion. And that's how I remember him. But I think my enduring image of Butch Stewart will always be in a plaid shirt with a red bow tie. That man made a plaid shirt so debonair, so sexy, so top management. He brought that flair. And when you walked into a room and Butch Stewart was there, you knew he was there without seeing him. Yeah? and Jamaica has lost a great son.
Thank you for sharing with us,
death of
Erica.
Butch Stewart.
Thank you
Yeah.
very much.
Yeah, man.
Thanks,
Yeah, man.
Erica.
Okay.
What a word. It was indeed. A fitting last word. Listen, we've come to the end of our first edition of 2021 of Real Chat. We're going to continue to chat, you know.
Yes.
We started this in October, and we are going steadfastly along. All that we bring to bear in terms of the topics raised and discussed, we find it engaging. It is what we want to talk about. It is what we feel that you want to talk about. You never want to talk about sports alone yet.
Yeah.
You've always wanted this melting pot of all that you may indulge, because it is what is intense.
And what is good so far, Curtis, is that we traveled through the storm, the hiccup, to their time when the technology let us down. Not from our standpoint, but from outside. We corrected, and we are where we think we want to be at the present time. And we'll continue to grow. I just ask you to subscribe, share, give us the likes. And I know that
subscribe to this channel to support this movement, right? Use the Cash App you see on the screen, right? Next week, Thursday, 3 o'clock, right up to 6 o'clock, more chat.
Any
Sports chat,
yes.
real chat,
Chat your chat.
chat, Bianca chat.
Or it's the real chat.
Next week.